I'm Kate,
I'm Elle.
and we are down to Fae, which is perfect for our next book review, A Dawn of Onyx by Kate Golden. This is a book that I listen to, and we all know how hard it is for me to pay attention to audiobooks sometimes, but I was mentally present for most of this one,
Nice.
which is a huge win. I'm not even mentally present like most of the time IRL. And I know that we've talked about this, but I always run out of audiobook minutes. So I was having to top off. They call it top off. So I was topping off over and over and over again. And first of all, it makes me feel like an addict because I'm like, one more top off.
Does that mean that like you get a few chapters at a time?
No, it's like hours.
Wow.
Like I ran out of the hours that I could listen to, and then it'll give you like 10 more hours.
That's
And I know in my
interesting.
heart that I ended up paying more than if I just bought the whole book on Audible.
Well, girl math.
That's girl math for sure. But to Spotify's credit, I would have never read this if it wasn't recommended to me. Like after I finished the Book of Azrael, which I'd love to go back and do a whole episode about that one since we've changed the review format. But after I finished that, Spotify was like, "Hey slut, you should read this next." And no one knows me like the algorithm
Oh my
because
God.
I really liked it. And I'll talk about the other books. So like right now, I want to talk about A Dawn of Onyx, obviously. But then I finished Lights Out, which was my first like dark romance, no supernatural elements to it.
That's been a big one everybody's been talking about
Yeah,
too.
it was sexy. Oh, I think it was the narrator's voice too, Jacob Morgan. And
That's
then
fun.
I'm reading or listening to Blood of Hercules right now.
We have so much coming up to talk about. How exciting for
I'll
us.
start with Dawn of Onyx, though. So, A Dawn of Onyx is book one in the Sacred Stones series by Kate Golden. And you're not going to forget the name of the series because the FMC says shit like, buy the stones constantly. It's going to get on your nerves. The world building is decent. It's nothing super complex, which is fine for a quick, fun read. You know, like not everything needs to be Lord of the Rings.
Fair.
And I hope that we learn more about the stones themselves because I do love the concept of kingdoms. Like the kingdoms are named after stones, like the kingdom of amber, the kingdom of onyx. But I don't totally understand the lore yet or the gods or like the villain's motivations. But we're going to get there.
Is the series complete?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's 3 books. I'm almost done with book 2, but I'm only going to talk about book 1 except for I'll tell you when we finally get some spice in book 2 because priorities. You need to know going into this when you're going to get to spice.
Thank you.
So light spoilers ahead because it's impossible to talk through a book without revealing some of the quote twist, which if you've read as many books in this genre as we have, like you're not going to be too surprised. And I don't mean that as a negative.
No, I mean, that's the whole reason we read these series. We like
Yes.
what we like.
And they happen really early on. It would be like trying to explain ACOTAR to someone without mentioning Faye, you know? Like it does, like this book kind of starts out similar to when we meet Feyre.
Okay.
So A Dawn of Onyx has all of our favorite shit, a girl who isn't like other girls, a prophecy, a tortured shadow daddy who's a total cinnamon roll, magic, fae, enemies to lovers, banter, slow burn romance, like really slow.
Uh-oh.
But let's start with a quick plot overview. Our FMC is named Arwen Valendale, so someone's a Lord of the Rings fan.
It's like that's like the most fantasy name ever.
Very fantasy. And side note, Arwen means noble maiden in one of the Elvish languages.
Oh.
I don't know if that's what she was going for, but Arwen lives with her mother and sister in Amber. It's a shitty little kingdom at war with Onyx. And like it's not shitty, the kingdom isn't shitty. It's just depressing.
Oh, that's sad. But I mean, war can do that to you.
Yeah, it's like war ravaged.
Yeah.
And she blames it all on the evil king of Onyx, our early ACOTAR Reese of the story, and his name is King Ravenwood. There aren't a lot of men left in Amber because they've been drafted to be in the military. Kind of sounds nice. But it's like Arwen's brother Ryder has been drafted and her childhood friend / situationship Halden.
Oh.
And so Arwen is a healer professionally, but also personally because she cares for her mother who's chronically ill.
Okay.
She didn't just like do an online nursing course at University of Phoenix though. Like she actually has healing magic.
Oh.
But she doesn't know why. There are witches in the world, but her magic isn't like witch magic.
So she's really not like other girls.
Right. And we don't know who her father is.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. She was raised by an absolute piece of shit stepfather. So her siblings are really step siblings, but no one seems to have noticed all of the abuse going on. And
Ugh.
it kind of reminded me, that part reminded me of from Blood and Ash, the Duke guy who abused Poppy,
Yeah.
like that kind of situation.
Mm.
Also, if you're wondering why Arwen can't just heal her, like she has healing abilities. Her mom is chronically ill. If you're wondering why she can't just heal her mother, so is she.
Oh,
So was I. And there is a reason that you do eventually find out.
okay.
So our story starts one night. Arwen's brother Ryder shows up at their house. Remember, he's been drafted. He shows up at their house with a shit ton of money that he stole from Onyx soldiers.
Brave.
I did start I started out really disliking that character, really
Okay.
the whole family, because what the fuck? But I mean, he brought the soldiers to the house. So he stole the money and directly went to their house.
Oh, no, so they're all tracking them. Come
Exactly.
on.
But I have to keep reminding myself, like, he didn't want to fight in the war. He was drafted and he saw an opportunity to secure the bag and he took it. He just probably didn't think it through.
Mm.
But he does lead the soldiers directly to their house.
Gosh.
Arwen, her mother, sister, and brother are racing to get on a ship when they realize they don't have their mother's medicine.
Oh,
So
no.
Arwen, of course, is our martyr, our FMC martyr. So she runs back to the house where she finds the soldiers waiting. And you don't see anger from Arwen about it until book 2, but there is a moment where she's kind of crashing out. And one of the things is, I can't believe you guys fucking left me. And it doesn't help that, so Ryder's like the charismatic one that everyone automatically loves. So there's
Mhm.
some understandable resentment and bitterness. Then coupled with like, you brought the soldiers here. I got caught. You guys fucking left me. But so one of the soldiers at her house is dying and she heals him. His name is Barney and he actually turns out to be a good guy.
Barney.
But their general Bert is a total creep.
Bert.
I could not stop myself from picturing Bert from Bert and Ernie.
It doesn't sound like just Bert is not
Bert.
the strongest name for that. That's funny.
Well, a lot of the names are like, some of the names are very fancy and some of them are just like, yeah, Bert and Barney. When the soldiers see her abilities, so she heals Barney, and when they see what she's capable of, they make a deal that they're not going to go after her family as long as she goes with them to Shadowhold, a fortress in the Onyx Kingdom.
Okay.
Then they ride on a dragon
There's
to get there.
dragons?
What's one of those series where you're just reading along and then and a dragon was there, and then there's Faye, and there's Myrrh, and you're like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah, like, you don't know the extent of the fantasy until it
Right.
pops up in front of you.
Yeah.
Basically, you just have to be along for the ride sometimes.
Well, you don't find everything out in the beginning, which I guess is understandable because there's a lot that's hidden from people, like the existence of Fae. And we're just
Oh.
getting Arwen's POV. But there are moments where I was like, Kate, giant salamanders? What the fuck?
Ooh.
I can't even, when we get to the salamanders, I can't picture one. I don't know what that is. I know that it's real, but I picture like a frog that's been held back a couple grades.
They're kinda like
Like, I
goofy
can't
little
even picture
lizards.
one, but yeah, there's like battle salamanders. Anyway,
Interesting.
so she's taken to the Shadowhold dungeons, not great for someone with a phobia of enclosed spaces, but she meets a mysterious and smirky stranger who distracts her enough to calm down her panic. Like, it's very Reese fucking with Feyre to bring her out of her depression, like helping her feel anything, even if it's anger, just to get her out of that.
Well, it's making me think of when I think when the moon hatched and our
Oh, yeah.
FMC is in the dungeons and
Hmm.
there's a random guy there talking to her and she has no idea that not only was it her previous MMC, but it's also a king, but he just
Yes. Oh
happens
my
to be in the
God. You're so
dungeons.
right.
So that's kind of wild, but I guess we love that trope. It's also
Mhm.
very, again, Reese visiting Feyre in the dungeons.
Well, and the music in Ferret, like when I think about God, that first book, like I fell for Reese so fucking hard, and I still don't really know what's happened after Silver
You're
Flames.
just don't spiral. You're
I
not
can't
over
spar.
it.
Yeah, I can't. I can't even get into it. Okay. So the next day, the stranger is gone, and she assumes that he's been put to death. Like he was in the dungeon, so what else could have happened?
Right.
Arwen begins her job as the fortress healer and meets Mari and Doggin in the apothecary. Mari ends up being the best friend and a witch, and
Love it.
Doggin is a retired soldier who eventually begins training Arwen with a sword to defend herself after a really close call with Bert, who's not Bert and Ernie, because Bert would never.
No, he's bad Bert. But just you saying Doggin immediately makes me think of Black Dagger Brotherhood where they have
Oh my
Doggin.
god, I forgot about that,
Like,
yeah.
Doggin was not their name, it's what they
It's like the
were. So that's
butler.
interesting that that is his name. Very
Mhm.
interesting. We also love a training montage.
We
So,
do
a
love
girl
it.
becoming an amazing fighter after, like, a week.
I know, she's never picked up a sword, and now all of a sudden, she's the best at it.
I'm not coordinated for that.
Arwen plans on running, which isn't a great plan because shit is crazy in the woods. But at this point, she's still sleeping in the dungeons and she's worried about her family. So she tricks poor Barney into not locking her door. She kind of like flirts with him and he's like, and he gets really flustered.
Like Russ.
But yeah, exactly.
With Aelin and Russ.
But on her way to the woods, that's when she encounters Bad Bert.
Uh-oh.
But she's saved by King Ravenwood himself, and guess who it
Oh,
is?
shut up. Is this our dungeon daddy? Like, come on.
I don't know. They make a deal that Arwen will stay in Shadowhold as a healer if the king finds her family and makes sure they're safe. So again, very martyr FMC of I'll stay here if you take care of my family.
Have to do everything ourselves.
So we've got our forced proximity and lots of banter and tension. There's
Mhm.
also this backdrop of a mysterious prophecy that Arwen overhears the king and his second griffin talking about one night. Now that she has access to all these books in the Shadowhold library, Arwen finds a potential cure for her mother, but she needs a plant that only blooms during an eclipse, at night in the scary woods.
That's very specific.
She does
Okay.
ride out into the woods, not at night, like during the day. She rides out into the woods with "You can call me Kane." So like King Ravenswood, he's like, "You can call me Kane,"
Okay.
and they're on one horse. And she finds where the plant is, and she marks that location for the eclipse in a few weeks. They also have this moment where they're like racing for the water, and his mask, his like evil king mask slips, and then she sees the real him for a moment, and then his pants slip really low on his hips,
What
and
is
you're like,
happening with this horse? Did you lose a
I
belt?
know. There's also something in the woods that's been literally torn apart, so that's
Ooh.
concerning. But on the way back, who even cares that something was torn apart because they're both wet on the way back, which you're like, oh, sexy. But then if you're thinking about logistically riding on a horse with someone, just like having to put clothes on when you're wet.
It's like, on one hand, I'm thinking of getting chafing, but on the other hand, I'm like, are we rubbing against each other in our
Yes.
wet clothing?
Well,
Sexy.
she starts as trying to like stay stiff and like upright,
Yeah.
but then of course like the hours of riding, you just eventually like give
Sink back
in.
into him, of course.
Well, I don't want to keep comparing it to Akatar, but it's the way that Feyre felt about the Night Court before she saw Valaris. That's kind of how Arwen sees the Onyx Kingdom.
Okay.
Like how Feyre thought Rhys was this ruthless monster. And also like Blood and Ash and
Mhm.
Flesh and Fire, those series, like how Syrah sees the primal of death and how Poppy thinks the Dark One is the villain. Is like that's King Ravenswood.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yes. It's also one of those where the MMC didn't care that everyone thought they were a monster, but he doesn't like the way that he looks through the FMC's eyes, like, if that makes sense. They don't
Yeah.
care until they meet this person. But of course, we learn all these characters, they're always just monsters to keep their people safe. He's heel presenting, but he's baby face on the inside.
Of course you would. Can you explain for those of us who weren't obsessed with WWE growing up what you're talking
So
about?
a heel is the bad guy, but he's a bad guy that gets a reaction. Like you want to be a good heel because that's when everyone's like booing. And then a baby face is the good guy.
This is obviously again, this is for WWE guys.
They're
Like
in
the
town. They're
very
in
real
Nashville this week
wrestling.
too. I really want to go.
Are they? Yeah, they do come through Nashville a lot.
So and I made you go one time.
Yeah, it was fun.
It's very fun.
You made me go twice actually.
Oh
Went to
yeah.
SummerSlam and we did
Oh, we
the
went to SummerSlam. That was so much fun.
NXT or whatever it was.
So one night, Kane takes Arwen to this, it's basically like a town hall, and she sees that he's actually pretty fair and he listens to his people. Like everything might not be what it seems with Amber, her kingdom, and its king. So like
Okay.
it's the way that everyone hates the Night Court. Then you get to the Night Court and you start seeing things like what they're actually like. And there's
Yeah.
much more to the story.
Well, that actually makes me think again of a recent book review we did with Riftborn because,
Mhm.
you know, our main character there, she's from a conquered nation, but like there's nothing bad happening that she can tell where she's currently
Right.
living. So it's like, what was going on here?
Mhm.
You know, it just gives you more questions.
So they're at this town hall, and 3 prisoners are brought in, and one of them is Halden.
Not our situationship.
I love that you're reacting to stuff like you've heard like a couple paragraphs. Not Halden,
I understand. I'm following.
but it is that guy from her town who was drafted with her brother. And Halden isn't just some small town like, oh shucks, just this like a very sweet guy. He sees Kane listening to Arwen and he takes advantage of their obvious
Oh,
connection. Like he sees that Arwen has the king's
it's
ear.
very Archer Finn.
So, yes, and so he gets sent to the dungeons instead of killed like the other 2 guys because of course Kane is this big bad monster, but when it comes to Arwen, like he can't seem to say no or upset her. So when she begs, like and it's nice, there's like a little bit of jealousy. He's totally
Ooh,
jelly.
we love a little jealousy.
Arwen visits Halden in the dungeons and he plays on their history together.
So unfortunate, but this is why you can't really trust the first love
You
interest.
can't. And she tells him the best night to escape would be when the king and princess from another kingdom, Perdo,
I think it's
visit.
Peridot.
Per- well, no, I listened to it though.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Maybe I'm wrong.
And it was like, Perdo. It was the way it was said was not how you would think because my brain was like, period. But no,
Sorry, I corrected you. I
it's
don't
like
even
it's
know.
like
I
a
shouldn't be correcting.
French feeling the way that they said it.
Perot.
Perdo,
It does say
Perot.
it sounds
Now I'm
fancy.
questioning myself. I don't know. It was said fancy. And Halden also kisses her, but it's kind of like when Dane kissed Violet and she was immediately like, never mind.
Is this the first time they've kissed? I know you said they
Yes.
were
No,
situationship.
they were like together, but this is the first time they're kissing after she's met King Ravenswood.
Yeah, it's like going back after college and kissing your high school sweetheart, and you're
And
like,
you're like,
"Oh, that's different."
did you always taste like cheap cigarettes? The night of the party, Arwen is looking hot as fuck, and she gets jealous over Kane, who's talking up the princess Amelia. And Arwen and Kane go to a wine cellar, and they end up locked in the wine cellar once an explosion goes off during Halden's escape.
Oh no, they're trapped.
Which, yeah, exactly. Which he definitely didn't mention there was going to be a giant explosion. And he also doesn't wait on Arwen because originally she was going to escape with him,
What an asshole.
but then she got locked in this wine cellar.
And he's like, "Well, gotta go."
Well, and that's what Kane is the angriest about. Not that she indirectly helped the prisoner of war escape, but he's outraged on her behalf because the guy left her.
I love that.
Well, and
this is how I'm a sap. Got it.
The next night, the night of the eclipse, Arwen goes into the woods for the herb for her mother's cure, and she's chased by Chimera.
Syrinx would never.
This is not Syrinx.
This is not the same Siri.
When she almost kills the Chimera, the creature's mate is so upset that she's like, fuck, and heals it because it's just so sad. Like, even though they were just chasing her, when she sees the one crying over its mate.
Oh no, that like breaks my heart.
I know. That's exactly how she responds. So she saves it, and then it saves her from this talking wolf thing that's actually Fae.
Ooh.
Because they're a Fae. Kane finds her in the forest, and we get one of our favorite tropes where the man fusses over the woman and takes care of her while she's sick or injured.
Yep.
And this is where we find out who and what Kane is, what the prophecy is. And I won't spoil all of it, but it ends with Arwen going to Perot, which again is attacked by, I shit you not, giant salamanders.
I mean,
giant salamanders.
I'm going back to there being a prophecy. Like, of course there's a fucking prophecy.
Yes.
I mean, I love that trope though, because you're like, okay, I have so many questions. It keeps you like hanging on for what the answer is.
Well, and I'm trying to remember what the prophecy is about. Like a person, they're the only person capable of killing who's basically the big bad.
Oh.
So,
and it sounds like
I wonder who it is.
Maybe Arwen didn't know the true big bad based on growing up in such a like defeated country or at the time. But also giant salamanders.
Giant salamanders.
Kate, you're so unserious for that.
Arwen is reunited with her family just in time for a huge loss.
Oh.
But they're like right at the end of the book, there's a bunch of big reveals, not just about Kane, who is King Ravenswood, but also Arwen and her fate and that prophecy. It ends on a cliffhanger. And again, I'm almost through book 2.
Okay.
Which I'm enjoying because we see more of the world, including Myrrh. Like Myrrh exists.
Love
and
that.
we meet some new characters, like a very handsome prince.
Ooh.
So we got a little like, not a love triangle, but like a little jealousy.
Okay.
And I would say Overall, I enjoyed the audiobook. The narrator didn't get on my nerves. We get Kane's POV in book 2, so there's a male narrator for that. But is there anything worse than a woman doing a man's voice or a man doing a woman's voice? You know, like when they're like imitating someone else, and they're like, and then Kane was like, "Oh, whoa, 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 whoa."
Sometimes it's fine, and then sometimes it's awful, and you're like, "You just ruined this book for me. This is why I need to read it
Well,
first."
just hire Jacob Morgan for every male character.
Yeah,
He's so fucking
that's a
good.
sexy
I'm
voice.
obsessed with him. He's the lights out guy, but oh my god,
Yeah.
10 out of 10. My one, I don't wanna say warning, but caution, I guess, is it takes until about halfway through book 2 for any spice at all.
Are these very long books? 'Cause I with
It's hard to tell when I'm listening.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've done books before where they're not terribly long, so I wasn't as upset that the
Mhm.
spice didn't happen in book 1 because there's the buildup.
Yeah.
But if this is, like, 800 pages, then it's like, "Wow, we'll get there
I don't
eventually."
think it was that long. Like,
Okay.
it's good soup once you get when you get to the spice, it's good.
Nice.
It starts with a finger bang
Love
before
this
a
for us.
bang bang a few chapters
A
later.
bang bang.
It was worth the wait, but I'm a little tired of virgin FMCs and hundreds-year-old slutty MMCs. I
Yeah.
mean, I still eat that shit up.
I mean, it's a common trope we see, but yeah.
Even Blood of Hercules that I'm listening to right now, she's 19 years old, and I'm assuming a virgin, so I just
Yeah.
how many more times am I gonna have to read about a girl with a dick in her face or like, sorry, velvet wrapped steel in her face and no idea what to do with it.
I mean, did you not do, like, a keyword search before you started this?
I mean, it's an audiobook,
Okay.
but once I finished book 1 and no one actually finished
Ugh.
in book 1, I did pull up book 2 on Kindle. You're gonna die. I did a keyword search. One of the words was apex and it got a hit and I was like, "Fuck yeah."
Now we're talking.
And it said, "I looked up at the apex of the tent."
Stop.
Like, Kate, you fucking know that's not what I meant.
That's actually hilarious. That makes me think of JLA saying she was intentionally
Yes!
putting was it thrust?
Thrust the door.
She was like, "Oh, is this a problem? Thrusting my sword."
Here's what I didn't love.
Okay.
Kane is broody and hot, but you don't get much else from him. Like, I couldn't get a feel for his personality.
Mhm.
The magic system didn't make a ton of sense to me, but I could just be stupid. I
Maybe
maybe I'm
I
just
could
stupid.
just be
I could
stupid.
just be stupid.
Maybe it'll be explained more as they go.
Yeah, it's definitely possible, and we know me listening, I don't have as much comprehension.
We've talked about that before though with some series where they like I appreciate a series that kind of explains things to you in the beginning versus there's some series where things just kind of happen and you learn as you go, which
Mhm.
it's not terrible, but sometimes it's frustrating.
Well, and I would label book 1 as YA with mature trauma, if that makes sense, like, some adult things happen to her, and there are adult situations, but there's definitely not spice.
Okay.
I also don't really understand the villain or his motivations yet. It's like
Okay.
we just needed a conflict in the background to drive the rest of the story, but that conflict itself hasn't been fleshed out. And maybe it's in book 3 and I haven't gotten there yet, so I don't want to prejudge it.
Okay.
But I enjoyed it overall. Enemies to lovers, magic, prophecy, banter, secret identities. He falls first. He literally says, "Who hurt you?" At one point, I was like
Stop.
kicking my feet and giggling. And I did like the side characters, and I hope we get a little side romance between Mari and Griffin, the
Okay.
witch and the king's second. And like I said, I will keep you guys updated on book 3. And after that, so like I finished Lights Out, reading Blood of Hercules. If you have any other book recs, DM us at DTFA Podcast. And then for next week, I think we're working on another one of our favorite reverse harems.
Yes, and it's called Power of 5, and we have recommended it before, but it was definitely not in the last year. So now
Mhm.
that we're giving more time, I know we definitely have discussed it and like
It's so
we
good.
we did a video a long time ago with like our top reverse harems and it was in that list. So it is a lot of fun. I still would say that the Dark Face series, like the Ruthless Boys of the
Oh,
Zodiac,
that's like our
is my
top.
favorite, but I
Mhm.
also still enjoy going back and rereading this one. So we'll definitely talk about it next week.
We will see you guys next week.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.